So I am Moha Ennaji, professor at the University of Fes, Morocco. I'm a researcher in North African studies, and I've done research on migration and gender issues and education issues in North Africa. First of all, let me say that COVID-19 era will be very hard, and especially that we don't know when the COVID-19 crisis will end. Maybe, and its impact will last for years. Specialists say the impact of COVID-19 will take over 2 years on the economies, but also on healthcare, on security, and on societies in general. So since the declaration by the World Health Organization of the COVID-19 as a global pandemic uh, last March, governments in North Africa and the Middle East have imposed a series of measures to slow down the spread of the disease. And of course, this policy has aimed to, reduce the spread of the pandemic and take measures also to ensure security and also ensure food security and make sure and take measures on agriculture and food security in the region to make sure that the population during the lockdown and after have the food and nutrition they need for that period. So ample food supplies, now exist in North Africa, particularly in Morocco, and despite worries about the future and the future of food security, global cereal markets are expected to remain balanced in the near future. But according again to the UN experts, Africa in general will suffer a lot from the lack of food insecurity, and millions of people may suffer from lack of food and starvation if nothing is done by the international community to help Africa in this domain. Well, for the time being in North Africa, I think food supplies and reserves are satisfactory in most countries, but worries remain for countries affected by conflicts and instability. And I'm thinking here of Libya, of countries of the Sahel, of Lebanon in the Middle East. And the situation of food availability in the region is generally in line with global level, with cereals reserves at a satisfactory level in most countries, despite the region being highly dependent on cereal imports and therefore vulnerable to global markets disruption. So prospects for cereal production in 2021, for example, are generally, not very good, with especially in the Maghreb, where we already experienced droughts. Morocco, for example, has had the droughts for the last 2 years, and this is not a very good sign for the food security in the Maghreb. Also, along the military security and so on, we have noticed that during the pandemic, the military have done a wonderful job. I'm thinking here of Morocco, but also Algeria and Tunisia, and the military have been very helpful in trying to help control the pandemic. So there were like a lot of military, uh, you know, medical doctors and teams who have been spread out through hospitals and areas in Morocco to help, with the testing, but also to help, with the hospitalization of people infected with the coronavirus. On the other hand, at the level of security and democracy and civil liberties, we have seen that there is a hot debate now in North Africa, particularly in Morocco and Algeria, where governments have taken like the opportunity or seize the opportunity of the COVID-19 crisis to reinforce the presence of the state and the presence of the authorities on the ground to make sure that people accept the lockdown and respect these conditions. But also, this has led, in some cases, some extreme cases, to crack down on anti-government protesters. And here I refer you to the Algerian government that cracked down on protesters and prosecuted more than 5,000 people, including critics of the government. Although very recently the government has released some of the leaders of the Hirak movement in Algeria. The same thing in Morocco. There is debate that few journalists have been arrested during the pandemic because they produced material that was not appropriate for the local authorities. So there is a rise in reporting, from different sources about the COVID-19 crisis and also its impact on civil liberties. And there are many, experts, and I do believe myself that the civil liberties and the democratization process in the region will be impeded by the COVID-19 crisis in the future, because for the time being, as I said, the role of the state has become stronger than before. And what is even more surprising is that there is no reaction, or there's a very weak reaction against the strong presence of the state. The civil society, the media in the region seem to accept this new state being predominant, and taking the liberties to force lockdowns or to repress sometimes the civil liberties. So the reaction to these, to this like presence of the state and the reduction of civil liberties, the reaction is very weak. And if you take into account the conflict countries like Libya, where the pandemic is spreading, and war also, civil war is taking place at the same time. I think the security of the region is really in balance. In Libya, the coronavirus pandemic has provided cover for escalating the conflict between General Haftar and the legitimate government in Tripoli. And of course, this escalation will be worse in the future, especially with the interference of foreign powers like Turkey and Russia in the conflict. And of course, the health sector will continue to degrade or to be worse and worse in Libya. And I think that with the shelling of Al Khadra General Hospital recently, the healthcare system in Libya is almost destroyed. So I would like to say that, in conflict zones, like Libya, the situation will be worse. And if we add to it the Sahel countries, where there is already a strong presence of terrorist groups like Boko Haram, and now with the Mali, facing a lot of street protests asking for the resignation of the president of the region is in danger. And from the Maghreb to sub-Saharan Africa, I do think that the security will be challenged in the post-COVID. The longer the COVID crisis will take, the worse the situation will be in 3-4 years, because the impact will be quite destructive, in my view. Thank you.